we are out on a ride on the KTM 1090 Adventure R, and we've got kind of a cool little area here. Is the Aqueduct for California, shimmering in the light there. Super cool. We're on one of the back roads here. I want to make an announcement. We're going to do we're going to do a big trip. So, a big adventure trip, and I kind of want to document a lot of the different process, things I go through to plan for a large event or a large adventure, more of an off-road adventure type. Just looking at my bike here, so the first thing we will talk about is motorcycles. So this would sort of, I'm just going for a ride, but we're going to talk about bikes and bike selection for doing a major off-road adventure. This is going to be the Wyoming BDR, and I always ride my bikes to my adventures, so that's kind of why I choose a larger adventure bike. If you are not riding to your adventure, if you want to trailer your bike, the smaller the better. Smallest bike you can get away with is going to be the best bike you can get away with, just because, one, the weight of the bike, the easier maneuvering, and just overall enjoyment of the bike. I mean, you really don't need a 1,000cc motorcycle off-road. 250 is plenty. So, talking about bikes, hopefully you guys can hear me. There's a lot of wind out here today, but alright guys, we're going to talk about those motorcycles a little bit more. So if you are not an off-road rider and you're planning a big adventure like this, it's going to be an off-road adventure, pick the smallest bike you can. So my favorite would be the KLX 250, KLX 300. It's a bit tall, but you have more adjustability in the suspension, so that you can adjust the suspension. Suspension's better, but it's a bit tall of a bike. So if you want it just a little bit shorter, the Honda CRF 250L or 300L, fantastic bike, and it's just a tad bit shorter. The suspension's not quite as good, but you know, whatever. Then what if you're not quite tall? Well, if you're not quite tall, or you just want a bike that you can touch the ground easily on, then go with the Yamaha XT250. It's a fantastic motorcycle, and it has a really low seat, so that works out well. Suspension's sort of on par with that Honda. There's no real adjustability. You can crank down the spring on the rear shock just to give it a little bit more, you know, for the added weight that you might be putting on it. And you can get luggage for all of them. Now, even if you're an experienced rider and you're planning on towing your bike to the start of your adventure, then the smaller bike the better. You're just going to have more fun. You don't need a 1,000cc motorcycle off-road. It just becomes useless. We need to ride to your adventure, so it's 1,500 miles to get to the start of where we're starting the off-road section of this ride. And so then you need to step up to something like a 650. And I say step up because it's up in weight, it's up in height, and it costs more. So then you go to like a KLR 650. You could go with the Fs. So in BMWs, so Kawasaki KLR 650, BMW F650GS or G650GS. Great bikes. There are some confusion on some of those bikes because that 650 at one point for I think a 2-year period of time was an 800cc motor. So you just have to be aware if it has that big motor in it and it has the larger frame size, it's just as heavy as the 800 because, well, it is an 800. So these are the style of the 650 that has the 650 motor in it. They are a wonderful bike, easy to ride, pretty low seat, and you can travel down the freeway all day long in comfort. The KLR 650, they're a bit tall. They are, the nice thing about the KLR 650 is they really are kind of bulletproof. They, you can get parts pretty much anywhere. Even, you might even find a rancher that's got one, and if you needed a part, you're probably going to be able to get it. Great bike, low cost. a great way to go. Honda has another bike that would be worth considering, and that is the XR650L. And that's a fantastic motorcycle as well. Will travel down the freeway no problem. It is a bit more off-road oriented than the KLR. And then we get into sort of like the DRZs and stuff like that. And I'm just not a big fan, so I'm not really going to cover them here because there's a 400. And the 400 really has about the power of the 250 and the weight of the 650. And so there's really no need. And their 650 is just super heavy. I just, you know, the other bikes are just better. And then kind of going up from there, you want the big adventure bike because you're going to either do chew-up travel, you're going to bring a lot of stuff with you, or you just like that extra challenge. The big bikes really are super comfortable to tour on. So doing 1,500 miles to get to the start with a 1,000cc motorcycle kind of makes it a pleasure. I mean, you'd rather be on the bike than in your car, so that's really nice. The drawback to that is that you've got all that extra weight when you're off-road, and so that's something to consider. Some people really like the challenge of that extra weight in the bigger bike. I've had quite a few bikes, and let's kind of cover some of those bikes that I think are great. You've got the BMW. Let's just cover the number one thing that everybody starts to look at, and that's the BMW R1200 RT. I'm sorry, RT GS, or the 1250 GS. It's a big mammoth motorcycle. They actually are pretty wonderful to ride off-road. Just make sure you put the right tires on it for being off-road, and I think they can be fun as long as you've got a lot of experience and you like that challenge of the extra weight. Having this boxer engine on it makes it a lot easier to pick up when you do drop it. Just keep in mind you have a $20,000 or more motorcycle that you're going to take off-road and drop multiple times. If you're good with that, awesome. Another bike to consider in that category, and I'm just going to run right over to Yamaha's house. Yamaha has that Super Tenere, and that is a really overlooked bike, and it's just absolutely awesome. It rides like a big dirt bike. You will never be worried about taking that thing anywhere because it just feels so at home off-road. You put the right tires on it, and it just acts like a big, goofy dirt bike. And I don't know why I'm saying goofy, but it just is it's a big, wonderful dirt bike. It is one of the heaviest of the bunch on paper, but I gotta tell you, I would ignore that number. When you're getting up in the when you get up in the numbers like that, most of the manufacturers are lying anyways. I mean, there's, you know, they rate the BMW R1250 RT as the weight figures are just wrong when you put it on a scale. And it's kind of the same with all of them. So I think with that, Yamaha, just ignore the weight because it certainly does not feel like a heavy motorcycle. I took one off-road, did the Colorado Backcountry Discovery Route. No issues whatsoever with that bike. I never even dropped it. I mean, it was just that wonderful. All right, enough of that. We get on to, there's KTM, well, they've got quite a few. So this one that I'm riding is 1090. I also had a 1190 and a 1290, all in the R models, which is more off-road oriented. They're all very tall bikes, especially the R models. There's a little bit more suspension. And at 6 foot tall, I can just barely touch the ground. When I have the suspension set up the way I want it, I'm just to my tippy toes. And if you're not comfortable with that, it's not a good bike for you because it's going to be, you know, intimidating to ride when you can't touch the ground. But if you're comfortable with it, it's no big deal. Anyways, there's that. Let's go. There's some other bikes to consider that aren't, you know, 1000cc or more. And one consideration is the F800 GS. It's a fantastic motorcycle. Can handle the freeway just fine, and acts like a dirt bike. It really feels like a dirt bike off-road. Other than that, guys, I think that kind of covers those whole bikes. If I were to give some advice on what bike to bring, if you can trailer the bike there, then go with a 250, 300. If you are, and just, you know, keep the cost down. You know, it's like, why spend so much? Just have fun. If you are gonna ride there, then go with like a 650, something like that. If you like the challenge and you've got a bike that's going to be sort of your bike for everything, and you don't mind dropping a big bike, then some of the bigger bikes are a lot of fun, and you can do a lot of touring on them as well. All of them have luggage choices and things like that to bring. If you're going 2 up, you need a big bike. It makes it a lot better. It's really hard to ride a small bike with 2 people on it, especially if you're riding there. Anyways, guys, next up we're going to talk more about this adventure, but I want to start getting into the details of the route planning and like where you're going to go, because that's may decide what bike you want. It may decide on everything, even the gear. So we'll probably talk about route planning next and where you're going to go and why to choose one place over another, and then also go over all the gear. And this is a good time for me to go over gear because a lot of my gear is actually worn out, so I'm having to buy some new gear right now because over the last 20 some odd years of riding and doing off-roading, I've worn some stuff out. So it's time to either buy new gear or deal with some other stuff that I have, and we're going to go over those choices next. Alright guys, have fun, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell icon so that you'll get the next video that comes up on this series. And then I'm going to do a video series on all of the, during the trip as well. I'm going to try to break that up into each day so you can get an idea what that adventure is going to be like. Cheers! Later!